Hello and welcome to my older adult presentation. This is narrated by Ignacio Bravo for the course SW 501. To begin with an introduction for the older adult interview, the interviewee was Joe Givens, who is a 92-year-old Army veteran. Due to COVID-19, the interview was originally over the phone, and eventually we were able to finish the interview in person, taking place in the participant's backyard. During the interview, we discussed his experiences growing up and what experiences seemed to shape his character development. Joe reported having developed mistrust of his parents at a very young age because of the physical abuse he experienced due to his parents' alcohol abuse. This affected his stage 4 of identity because he said he would think about how his parents behaved and would promise himself to not be like them. At an adolescent age, he told himself that he would never drink alcohol and maintain this still today. In his young adulthood and adulthood, he continued to maintain this part of his identity. And when he married, he avoided drinking any alcohol, even though his wife would have a glass of wine with dinner. He mentioned he was open to buy her wine if he was out, but did not partake in drinking it. Today he looks back at his past with integrity and prideful of his accomplishments, such as serving in the military, going to college, and becoming a principal, all while supporting his wife and 5 children. In an article recently written, having integrity at an older age is one of the roots that lead to happiness in the older stage of life, or in the eighth stage, according to Erickson. While interviewing Joe, I chose to focus on the eighth developmental stage in Erickson's theory of development. In this stage, the focus is on older adults in the age of 65 years of age or older. Erickson theorized that in this stage, older adults begin to look back and reflect on their life accomplishments and choices. We begin to identify as having lived a successful life and enter integrity, which leads to happiness and better self satisfaction in the older stage, or regret not having achieved our goals and the decisions that were made, which will lead to bitterness, regret, and despair. In addition, in another recent article that was written, it stated that those individuals who are able to reach integrity are able to live a healthier life than those who maintain in the eighth stage but reach despair. As an older adult, Joe often reflects back at his life experiences and choices. One of these reflections he emphasized on was having his fourth child. After having his first 3 children, him and his wife decided to have a fourth before it was too late. The first 3 had been healthy children, so there was no reason to expect something different. When his fourth child was born, she was diagnosed with Down syndrome along with other health complications. Joe shared that after speaking with the doctor, they advised him and his wife to leave the child in the hospital since she most likely would not make it past a few weeks, and there was no point on getting attached to the child. Joe discussed this with his wife, and they decided that they would take home their daughter as a 92 year take home their daughter. As a 92-year-old man today, Joe reflects back to this decision every time he sees his daughter. Even though he continues to care for her at 92 years old, he reflects back to his choice as being the right choice and has never, in his 92 years, had any regrets. For Joe, having this decision was an important experience for him because today he continues to see his daughter grow as he grows with her as well. He looks back at the choice that he made and the decision that he made, and he's happy with his choice. He mentioned that had he made a different choice, he would have struggled to live with that through the different developmental stages of his life. And today, in the eighth stage, he would have a hard time living with that in his conscience. After speaking with Joe, it appears that he has reached the integrity aspect of Erickson's eighth stage of development, although he does mention that there are some challenges that he still faces. He faces now in this stage, for one, he struggles with accepting not having had a better relationship with his parents, and has guilt for not having been able to protect his younger brother and his younger sister from the physical abuse growing up. Still, today he believes that it has been challenging to try and move from this guilt, and often when he sees his brother or his sister, he struggles to not touch back on these experiences and apologize for what he was not able to do for them then. However, he reports feeling that he has accomplished peace of mind with his life since he has been able to continue to support everyone around him and fulfill his bucket list. Reflecting on his life, he sees his biggest accomplishments as being able to raise 5 successful children, having been a good parent, and having kept his promise to himself of staying away from alcohol, and reports that in his 92 years, he has never drank. In other words, in the eighth stage of development, Joe's biggest challenges are thinking back to what he was able to do and what he was not able to accomplish as far as helping his brother and his sister. But when he thinks about what he was able to accomplish for his wife and children and for himself, he does feel accomplished and accepts his choices and his life. While speaking with Joe, it was clear that he has been able to avoid despair. One of the effects in navigating away from this has been maintaining an optimistic view of his life choices. Although he does not quote this exact words, he says um, that thinking that although he did not have the strongest parental support, he was able to develop a strong bond with his siblings as a result of it. He sees his experience of having experienced neglect as an opportunity for him to become more independent, along with his continued need to take care of his daughter as something that moved him to prioritize his family and find the joy of the little things. In this stage, the crises that are faced by Joe are integrity and despair. And Joe has been able to resolve these crises by accepting the choices that he has made and what he has been able to accomplish in comparison to what he was not able to achieve. He has avoided despair by exploring his sense of self and being able to focus on seeing his life with an optimistic view and focus on positive reflection. As a white male in a diverse neighborhood, Joe was able to spend time meeting people with different cultures and backgrounds, learning to respect others for who they are instead of seeing them as what they are. End quote by Joe. And that helped him find a sense of identity as well as being accepting to others. Growing up in Newcastle, Delaware, Joe interacted with people of different cultural backgrounds. This paved a path to help him identify as being different than the people around him and overcoming the crisis of identity. Seeing himself as a white male who was treated different than his friends who were not. He mentioned having to enter certain stores at a younger age because of his friends tried to, they would be talked down on and badgered for being in the store. In his military time, it helped him understand intimacy with who would later become his wife. He talked about being stationed in Washington, D.C., and hitchhiking his way to Delaware to see his girlfriend and his family. Sometimes it would take several hours to make the trip back and forth. This was before I-95 was built and maintaining contact and having to maintain contact by letter. Also learning other cultures in his travel and college time, which led him to become more open-minded to other cultures and how he was treated by other cultures. Opened his mind further to understanding to how wrongly people of color and minorities were treated in the US. After college and the military time, he faced stage 7 and overcame poverty with the focus on working for his family to prepare his future generations' well being. Joe reflects back to how he treated the people around him and is happy to feel that he treated everybody equally. Had he not, he mentioned he would feel guilt over how he behaved towards others. Having known many people of color in the mid 1900s, having learned to dress and act like other Caucasian folk, but always having a sense of guilt for how minorities were treated, he learned self identity as a white male based on how people treated him in comparison to how his friends of color were treated, who were not allowed to participate in simple actions such as entering certain diners. This shaped his sense of respect for minorities and identity, as accepting others for equal treatment. Having viewed how his friends and people of minority background were treated led him to believe that treating people equally was the right thing to do. Had he experienced oppression, he believes his life would have been much different. He mentioned how being a white male, he was treated better while minorities were treated in a way that was constant being talked down on. And he mentions how this oppression could have caused an effect on his self-esteem. Having experienced this, he thinks he would have had identity confusion, questioning why he was treated such a way and if he truly was less than others. Joe has would have struggled much more to try and achieve the intimacy with his girlfriend at that time because most likely being neglected of hitching a ride on his way from Washington to Delaware and on his way back. Having witnessed the oppression that his friends of minority backgrounds and color went through, helped shape Joe's personality because he saw the behavior that he wanted to incorporate as his own, and he saw the behavior that he found that he did not want to be a part of and incorporate as his. He saw that what the outcome of individuals' actions and the result from them, and based off that, his he incorporated those which he believed in. Today, Joe is able to look back at how he treated people around him and is satisfied instead of having despair towards how he treated others around him. Having experienced some abuse and neglect at an early age, Joe used this to identify personality traits that he wanted to avoid, such as drinking. Seeing his experiences in a multi-lens perspective, we believe that because of his younger experiences, he could have been an unsuccessful individual based on the environment he grew up in. However, Joe chose to be the opposite of what his environment had taught him, and instead of mirroring the behavior around him, he figured the actions that led to success and implemented those as his own, ignoring those which would lead him to wrongdoing. Instead, he used social policies and his experience in the military to overcome his environment and proceed with his education in order to acquire a better position in his job.